The Minilab 3 is a MIDI controller that's been out for quite some time, but I've noticed more and more people discovering it since its release. And as somebody who has had it since its release, I figured I wanted to do an updated review of this controller. Arturia has updated the Minilab 3 with a firmware update, but also I just wanted to give my experience as somebody who's used the Minilab 3 for quite some time. I want to tell you about why it's one of my favorite controllers for actually writing and producing music, and some things that I still don't like about this controller. Hopefully that's helpful for some of you that are on the search for the right MIDI controller for you. If you don't know me, my name is TAETRO. Welcome to my home studio. Today's video is brought to you by viewers like you who have hit the join button and are getting all kinds of cool perks from being a channel member, as well as our sponsor, DistroKid. I'll tell you about them later. For now, let's get right into talking about the Minilab 3. Alright, so as I mentioned at the top, the Minilab 3 is one of my favorite controllers for doing the writing and the production side of music making. There are other alternatives for live performance, which we'll talk about later. It's got really good Ableton Live integration, because if I want to scroll through my scenes, I can do that easily with this knob, and then holding Shift and turning this knob, I can scroll through and press and arm a different track. I can go from playing this instrument here, hold Shift, scroll over, and now I'm playing a totally different synth. Craziness. One feature they've added via a firmware update is the ability to lock the transport controls to the pads. Previously, we had to hold Shift, and then we could use our transport: loop, stop, play, record, tap tempo. But now, if we hold Shift and hold the second pad here, transport bank is now locked to our pads. This is very, very useful because this is my main use case for these pads here on the Minilab. If I launch a scene, I can stop, I can play, and then I can also record new ideas into the session view or the arrangement view. When I'm in DAW mode, whatever track I have selected, I can adjust the volume, the send A, the send B, as well as the panning of the track that I'm selected on. And of course, I've got the 8 macro knobs here, which I could map or use to control individual devices. So overall, from an Ableton workflow perspective, it's got a good integrated workflow here. So that's great for the writing process, the making music process. But the big benefit here, and something that Arturia has that not many other companies have, is a vast library of sounds it's just like an amazing library of sounds. So if you don't already know, Arturia creates a number of amazing plugins, including effects, but I'll focus on the instrument side of things here today, featuring classic synth sounds as well as more modern sounds with their Pigment synth, and then more experimental sounds with their Augmented series, which takes acoustic instruments and combines them with synthesis and gives a really unique experimental take on otherwise acoustic sounds. So the library is vast. I would say it's on par with something like the Native Instruments plugin library. And in terms of an ecosystem, I would say that Arturia has a leg up on the competition. I would say I enjoy using Analog Lab more than I enjoy using like Complete Control from Native Instruments. So naturally with an Arturia controller, and all of the Arturia controllers have this, we can go into the Arturia control mode, which means when I have an Arturia plugin selected, I immediately get sonic control over very, very useful macros that are different for each sound. And we have a good visual representation of that on screen as well. You can see that we've got the 8 macros aligning up with our macros on screen, as well as the faders, which also line up there. But not only that, again, I'm talking about the music writing process. I am able to actually switch through and scroll through our preset library. So as you're searching for the right sound you want to be using, you can scroll through that preset library and select a totally new sound. Scroll again, select a sound. Macros are automatically lined up here. and we can get right into coming up with musical ideas. Combine this integration with Arturia's own ecosystem, plus the Ableton Live integration. I think overall, that's why this is one of my favorite controllers for actually writing music. I can stay in the flow of creativity quicker. So let's work through this process in real time so I can show you the synergy here. Let's say we're working on a beat and I've actually already started working on one. I've got a few layers already, just a simple beat with some drums and some piano and another instrument. I want to add a layer to that, right? Well, I can, of course, if I'm in DAW mode, I can hold shift and I can change between my tracks, find the track I want to be on and arm it. Now from here, I can start testing this sound, but I can switch to the Arturia program mode, which since I have an Arturia synth loaded up here, I can easily just scroll through and find a new sound that I think might work. And what's interesting is on screen, I'm just looking at Ableton Live. I'm not even seeing the plugin window. But here on the screen on the Minilab, I can see the new sound name. That might be a sound I want to use, and I might want to tweak that sound now. And again, without the plugin window on screen, I can see exactly what I'm controlling here. Brightness, the chorus mix, phaser mix, etc. And I can tweak that sound. Add some delay there, and there's reverb already on it. And I might want to go up an octave. Let's record a very simple idea. Stop the music with the stop button, prepare to record, hit the record button. Let's record a simple idea. That's looping. It's not a very good musical idea, but it's there. And also it's like way too loud, right? So get into the mixing. Hold shift, go back to the DAW user program. Then I can start bringing down that mix. I could pan that slightly to the left if I want. I could send it out to more reverb and delay if I want. So that's just the fluid creative process with the Minilab 3 that I think synergizes really well. If you're committed to using a DAW like Ableton Live and then Arturia's plugin ecosystem, which I think is very robust, the workflow is very fitting for the Minilab 3. One additional feature I wish this controller had was an undo button. More and more controllers are adding that. Think about it. You're adding an idea, you mess up, you have to stop, you have to hit Command Z, or you're grabbing your mouse and hitting delete on something. Well, a lot of controllers have that undo button now, which keeps you in the workflow. I can just record, mess up, undo, record again, go with this cycle. Hopefully a Minilab 4 includes an undo button. And I do have lots of other criticisms for the Minilab 3, but I'm going to tell you about those right after I tell you about the distributor that I use to get my music on all the major streaming platforms, DistroKid. If you're out here making your music, you probably want to get it to all the people where they are listening to their music, whatever app that they use, or even if they want to make a video with it on Instagram or TikTok. You need a distributor for that. The distributor that I've been using since well before they ever sponsored this channel is DistroKid. The reason I chose DistroKid is because of their Be Prolific model. That means you pay once per year and can release as much music as you want, keeping 100% of your royalties. No paying per release and no giving them a cut. One of the reasons I've stayed with DistroKid is because they've got a bunch of cool features for their artists, like creating a hyperfollow page that you can edit and create a customized landing page for every music release that you have. You can add not only your DistroKid relevant links, but you can add things like merch links or links to your website and build the page out. I even put my YouTube videos on this page if I have a performance that goes along with that album. Super customizable. Also, they've got an app, so if you want to quickly check the stats of your release or even upload music from within the app, you can do that in addition to checking your bank and withdrawing money once you've earned enough from your releases. DistroKid has always been a great partner for the channel. I've got a 7% off link for you in the link in the description, so if you want to sign up or if you need a distributor, definitely recommend DistroKid. And I want to thank them once again for sponsoring my work. Back to the video. All right, so I've sort of talked about before how we're able to lock the pad controls to being our transport controls here, and that being the best use case for these pads. That is because my major criticism for the Minilab 3 is these pads are not ideal for finger drumming at all. So I've loaded up a stock drum kit here, and I'm definitely able to use these pads for finger drumming. I can even get some rolls out there. But as you can see there, as I'm trying to do more of a sensitive hi-hat pattern, I'm occasionally losing signal. It's because these pads are very, very firm. So the lowest level of press is not really being communicated through. I'm not really getting a signal if I touch it just very gently. So I do have to make sure I put a minimum amount of pressure there, which is a little higher than some other controllers in competition with the Minilab 3. Take the MPK Mini, for instance, which has MPC pads built right into it. These are pretty much the highest quality pads you're going to get in a mini key controller. But even something like the Launch Key Mini, it's got smaller pads, but I would say they just feel less firm and you can get a more sensitive touch out of them. So it's very interesting. But that being said, the addition of being able to sort of lock these pads to being transport control sort of makes up for that. And one solution I could present to you if you are a Minilab 3 owner, or if you really like the Minilab 3, is to just pair it with perhaps a pad controller, a controller that's dedicated for finger drumming. It's not a bad thing to have in your setup regardless, a separate pad controller. So if you do love the workflow of the Minilab 3, that's an alternative approach to just have a dedicated pad controller. Another criticism I have, which is also sort of pad related, if I go back into the Ableton controlling mode, the DAW mode, I get the ability to launch clips. Let's unlock the transport control there. So if I scroll up and down the scenes, we see that the controller is reflecting the scenes in my project. So I can launch this scene. They turn green when they're playing. Okay, that's all well and good. However, I think having just a single row of pads and clips to launch is not ideal. And here's why. When you're working on a track or when you're doing a performance specifically, which is when you're doing the most clip launching, you want to have instant access and control over your performance. So say I launch this scene here and I'm performing, and it's actually time to move off of this scene. I have to reach for this knob, navigate down, find some empty slot, and then start stopping different clips. But I can't see what clips are playing above it. I have to do the scrolling and navigate to an empty place. There's no clip stop buttons unless I scroll to an empty place and stop all these clips. This one actually recorded because the track was armed. So overall, it's not a great experience for clip launching, which is a performance aspect. Again, to bring up the Launch Key Mini, this one has the best clip launching for a mini keyboard controller, as well as the Akai APC Mini, which has a full launching grid. But if you're looking for both finger drumming and launching clips, Launch Key Mini is the best one to go there. And just by having two rows, I can have a row of playing clips, then I can use this bottom row as stop, solo, or mute buttons, or I can use it as another row of clips that I could launch. So if Arturia does want to go head first into this Ableton Live DAW integration, I think 2 rows of pads is really a minimum. And similarly to my finger drumming solution, if you are trying to use the Arturia Minilab in a performance setting, the addition of something like a Launchpad Mini might be helpful for you. So obviously this is very different from the finger drumming problem, but slightly similar. We've got 64 pads here, so you have instant access to be able to launch any clip across 8 tracks, 8 scenes. So just more hands-on control over launching clips, which will better supplement the sort of 1 row of pads that the Arturia Minilab 3 has. And the final criticism that I'll levy at the Minilab 3 has to do with its chord mode. So actually, let me go ahead and enable the chord mode, Shift Chord, and I'll navigate over to the piano. So I'm in chord mode now, which means I can play a single key and I can get a full chord sound. I can teach the Minilab 3 what kind of chord I want it to play. So let's play a standard triad, C, E, G, a major chord. If you watch my Music Theory for Beginner series, you already knew that. Here, now we get a nice major chord. And you might say, TAETRO, that sounds pretty good. What's the problem? Well, the problem is now it's only playing major chords. And if you are writing a track in C major, we should know, again, if you watch the Music Theory for Beginner series, that the chord built on A in the key of C major should be A minor. But instead, we're getting an A major chord here. Now, I know a lot of house music and other types of genres break these theory rules, and you might not mind having only one kind of chord per key. But for writing songs in the context of a key, I think it's much better to have integration where your chord mode is in relation to what key you're in, so that we could have chords like triads, but in the key of C major, this would give me a major chord, and here on A, it would give me a minor chord. Other controllers have implemented this. This is the MVAVE SMK2, which has both a scale and a chord mode. Both of those talk to each other. So you can write one key chord progressions on this controller and not have to worry about that. All in all, if you're going to have a chord mode on your controller, you should also have a key mode so that the chords can be relative to a given key, because that's how most people are going to be writing music, in a key. So don't let those criticisms distract you though. I am still standing by my statement that the Minilab 3 is one of my favorite controllers, especially for the writing and producing creative process. Now, when do I choose an alternative? That is a big question. You probably see me using the MBK Mini a lot on this channel, right? One major reason for that has to do with having this channel in general. A lot of people own the MBK Mini, and not all of my content is focused on just for Ableton Live users. So this is the best utilitarian representation for controllerism. I can teach a lot of things on the MBK Mini that aren't so specific to Ableton Live, and also it's just an overall high quality controller that a lot of people have. So for my educational content, it makes sense to use the controller that I know a ton of people are already using or buying. If I'm doing mobile performance stuff, you might see me using the Launch Key Mini because it is much slimmer than the Minilab. It's smaller and slimmer, more easily fits in a bag, and better performance features, as I mentioned earlier. And if I'm doing more mobile-based production with my phone or my iPad using apps, you might see me using a Bluetooth MIDI controller, the SMK25 Mark II here. Bluetooth MIDI controller just makes things way easier for working with iOS and mobile devices because I don't have to use a dongle and connect the controller to the computer with a wire. So all in all, I hope Arturia perhaps hears this video and takes a look at this, because there are some features that I think could be implemented in a Minilab 4 that could take things up to the next level. But I want to remind you all, you do not need to be like me. You do not need to have all these mini key controllers. I run a YouTube channel where I get this stuff for free. You should use the info that we're talking about here in this video and other places on this channel to make an informed decision about the aspects of music creation that are most important for you and which controller is the best tool for that aspect of music creation. And the main thing you should take away from this video is that there are no perfect controllers. I talked about loving this controller and then I levied a bunch of criticism at it. All controllers and all gear have strengths and weaknesses. So stop looking for perfection and just start making music. Thank you all so much for watching. Hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe if you haven't yet. A lot of perks for channel members, including getting feedback on your music, free sample downloads, Discord community, members only workshops. It's all available for channel members. And thank you again to DistroKid for sponsoring this video. This has been TAETRO. Have a good one.